Coleman. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. That was quite the intro. Thank you. We spoke a few days ago, and I shared a couple things she asked about, so that was fun. So my name's Ryan. I'm excited to be here today and help host this discussion. I lead marketing at StackAdapt, and we have a great team growing here in Deutschland, and there's lots of growth and excitement that we're doing. So we're just thankful to be a part of this D3Con event. So with that, let me introduce our group here. We got Kai here to my left. He's a group director for the DACH region at Meta, and very, very excited that he's here with us today. And we got John next to him at Index Exchange, SVP for several things over on that side. I'll let you introduce that.
Yeah,
and then
that's more on the sort of advertiser and agency side of the business.
Yep.
So I'm kind of overseeing the EMEA region.
Awesome. Yep. And then we have Alvaro from Nestlé.
Today in English.
Yeah. You're welcome to do it in German as well. So we're excited about, we're going to talk about maybe 4 or 5 topics today. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about regulatory changes. We're going to talk about personalization and localization in different regions, what's working in other regions and what we could maybe do and bring here. We'll talk about some other trends as well and have sort of an open discussion around several different areas. So with that, maybe we'll just jump right in. Any other maybe quick highlights that you'd like to, fun facts that you'd like to share? Otherwise, I think we could just, some of these sessions, we could just jump right in. Does that work?
Well, I mean, I'm very pleased that I actually made it here. There was some interesting when I woke up very early on Monday morning to hear that Hamburg airport was shut.
Yeah.
So, I think I was the only flight that actually made it that morning. So, and I will say there are some benefits to that. There was absolutely no queue for the taxis.
Yep.
So, thank you, Hamburg.
That worked out. Yeah, as Steffi mentioned, I lived here briefly. It was 20 years ago, so it's been 20 years, schon lange her. And it's been, I haven't had a chance to speak German other than Duolingo for a long time. So it's been really great trying to get back into things. I love it here. It's one of my favorite places. So, well, let's jump into it and talk a little bit about AI to start. And Alvaro, maybe we'll go to you first. Let me ask the question. As AI continues to evolve and programmatic advertising evolves within the space, what key innovations are you seeing and that are making the biggest impact? And from a global brands perspective of Nestlé, I'd love to get your take on that, of what can then the German market apply within those?
Sure, good question. We have tried some of them. The first one is AI-powered DCO. To get a hyper-personalized ad, to have the great impact with the best target group.
Yep.
So you have the different signals. It used to be target-based, time-based, but now you have the different signals to connect them to generate something better, bigger. The second one is ad fraud. Ad fraud is also just, sorry, it was German. It's now AI-based or driven, and it helps us also to reduce the ad fraud, to identify better this productivity.
Yep.
The second one is AI-driven bidding.
Yep.
A mix of predictable and also value-based bidding, which also help us to have a better performance and reduce the costs.
Yeah.
And the next one, it's the opportunity to make an omni-channel campaign, AI optimized, to get better contacts and get better results, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a lot of and incredible things happening with DCO, dynamic creative optimization with AI, some of the different ability to, I think it's going to open up a lot of even smaller brands and smaller agencies, the ability to work fast. There's some incredible things that you can do with imagery, audio, video. I think there's going to be a lot, we'll talk about channels here in a little bit, but around connected TV, I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for smaller brands to be able to run ads and campaigns, create creatives very, very quickly with AI, and open up that market. So I think it's going to be really fun over the next couple of years. Kai, what about you in terms of, I'd love to maybe just jump in a little bit on the question more specifically, how you're seeing AI changing the way brands approach media buying, just from your lens.
I think there's a couple of things. I don't know if you saw, so Alvaro used AI this morning, so he has definitely kind of a Kit Kat.
That's
if
real.
you have a question, he's going to get you a Kit Kat. So that's all AI based. I love that one. No, just kidding. I think like if we are looking into technology and AI, for media buying, it has definitely changed. And you can't remember, well, I'm gray-haired there, so I'm a bit other-haired today from a color because I lost a draw with my oldest son. But if you think about traditional companies on media planning, that was always like an annual path. If we are now thinking about brands working with their media agencies, it's literally a constant flow. Why is that? Because we have moved from a data-enabled one into a data-driven perspective. And if you think about kind of the triangle of the intersection between quality, speed, and content or control, which is literally KPIs, that has just kind of shrinked. So the dimensions between the three of them has literally kind of decreased, which makes it easier for all of us, for advertisers, but also agencies, including also creative agencies, to be faster in the market. There's one thing I think where we're going to see, and I want to leave you with 3 dimensions, is we have moved from audiences into outcomes, which is literally a change on how we are seeing media plans. It was always audience-based, now it's more outcome-based. We've moved from one voices to multiple voices because the intersection of the publishers that you have to work with has tremendously kind of increased over the last 5 years. And the third one is we are literally going into not raising the floor anymore, we are raising the ceiling now. And with that, I think media planning is now on the forefront when you think about kind of leveraging technology and leveraging AI.
Absolutely, yeah. From an SSP's perspective, let's go over to you, John, in terms of how's AI driving automation and programmatic, and the specific question around how can inventory curation help brands navigate challenges around brand safety and suitability in programmatic advertising?
Yeah, so maybe let's start with the brand safety point first, and then come back to the sort of the influence of AI. It feels like we're spending a lot of time over the last couple of days talking about that. But yeah, look, you know, the golden rule of brand safety in the SSP space, in the programmatic supply chain, is that you've got to get as close as you possibly can to the impression. Now, if you're not a publisher, if you can't be the publisher itself, you've got to ask yourself the ways in which you can do that to be sure that your ads are being shown in the place where you think they are. So I kind of, you know, there's probably a few rules. Rule number 1, you need to be directly integrated. And it seems like such a simple thing, but it's, you know, I think programmatic has lost a lot of trust over the years because of, you know, multiple parties existing in the supply chain. And the, you know, the biggest impact of that, outside of obviously the additional costs that incurs, is that you just simply don't know where your ads are being shown. So you must be directly integrated. The second thing is that you must demand transparency from your partners. And so for us at Index, that's all about being able to provide log level data. So that's the data on every single transaction that occurs on our exchange, on every publisher, defining precisely the placement on which an ad was shown and when it was shown, so that you can prove where those ads have appeared. So, you know, demanding transparency is absolutely critical. And then, you know, we talk a lot about curation and this kind of wave of innovation that's kind of coming with it. And obviously, you know, we're big believers in that. But it only really matters if you're not adding cost to the supply chain in doing so. Because at the end of the day, it's all about ensuring that more of an advertiser's money is reaching the end publisher, it's getting more working media. And if all you're doing in the curation space is just adding costs, then I would argue that that's not an ultimate benefit to the advertiser. And so, you know, we're big believers in that also. Now, as far as sort of AI is concerned, I think for us, where we see the most common application of that, the thing that's growing the most, is in custom bidding algorithms. So there's a number of companies springing up in this area, and kind of it's riding on the, I guess, the curation wave, because there's optionality. There's a different way to do it. So this is not new. Custom bidding has been happening in the DSP for a long time, but now the ability to do that on the supply side is opening up more inventory, better performance, and more audiences that were already always there, but you just couldn't find them before. And so, it's having a profound effect on the kind of performance and, like you said, Kai, outcomes that you can drive in programmatic media.
Absolutely, yeah. As we have a lot to cover, so I think let's maybe dive into privacy and regulation. Let's go over to you, Alvaro, and talk a little bit about how you're balancing privacy with also maintaining and driving strong advertising performance.
Okay, here we have two keywords. The first one is transparency, and the other one is consent. Mm-hmm. Those are our main focus and should be there. Then to answer your question, one of our solutions here in the industry, I think it's the first-party data. How do we collect it and what for? It should be clear also for the users. Mm-hmm. For that, we have a robust consent manager with the clear options of opt-in and opt-out. I think that's the first rule, to make it transparent. The second option that it's really getting better and better with the AI, it's a contextual targeting. I think that's a great solution. Mm-hmm. And the other one, it's the whole ID solutions from the diverse partners that offer us probabilistic but also deterministic options. With that, we are playing a fair game, always remembering should be transparent and user consent.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kai, what about you in terms of how are you seeing things across Meta and Meta clients as well, of navigating privacy and regulation?
Yeah, I think, well, if you're looking back, right, so we have always been a bit challenged by that one. Let's put directly the elephant in the room, right? But it was a good learning curve if you think about kind of how to work on the regulatory side, because, and funnily on AI, I want to bridge it to AI. Europe was the first region which did the AI Act. Funnily, we are not innovating in Europe. So from a regulatory standpoint, right, comparing it to the US and to China, which we are always looking from a tech perspective is, Europe was literally leading. Now we are behind because we are not investing into kind of those technologies which are needed. So from a policy perspective, what you have to do is, you have to literally take the politicians, the regulators, the partners, also the universities, the trade bodies that you work with on the hand and really work together in one room. Why? Because it's always a one-to-one perspective, which will not help to change the situation. So you have to kind of do that in a multiple ways. So our learning over the last years is you need to, in particular, come from a more academic perspective, because that is what resonates with regulators as well as politicians in the first place, in particular here in Europe. And then take it from there in really kind of hand-holding and show them the ways that AI is doing. The funny thing I'm always doing when I'm on stage in kind of a more regulatory thing is I'm always asking who has used kind of ChatGPT or any AI technology out there, and then there's like slightly hands going up. And then I'm saying, well, how much of that AI kind of output that you're going are you using when you're sending a love letter to your wife or to your husband or whoever, right? So, and then the hands are going down. And I think that's kind of that learning curve that we need to have on regulatory and policy. And funnily, if you think about Nestlé, but also about John as well, we have to deal with so many regulations across the world. If you're a large company or if you're operating in many regions, which will not get easier because you have to apply to the different kind of regulations which are there.
Different rules,
policies, right? Yeah. So the question that we ask ourselves is always, can AI help on that one as well going forward? And I think we are not there yet from an AI technology perspective, because it's emotions as well when we think about regulatory and policies.
Right when ChatGPT came out, it was for that Valentine's Day, that first time. I have 4 daughters. I had it create a quick poem for each of them, and they were blown away and all surprised that I spent all the time. And then I had to tell them that it was new technology, and I taught them about it. And but it was a hack right there in the beginning where you're doing things that had not been done before, just doing immediately. So I thought it was funny on your thought there. John, let's just talk maybe a little about maybe share examples of any partnerships that you're seeing that are helping advertisers focus and create privacy-first solutions. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, whenever we're working directly with a brand, very, very much like you guys, you want to be able to help brands bring kind of their unique strengths to the table. And a lot of times that's about helping them And a lot of times, thank you, that's about helping them to be able to onboard first-party data, but do it in a privacy-compliant manner. So the first thing that springs to mind is clean rooms. So we see, a huge amount of activity in that space where you're able to use, algorithmic matching to bring first-party data to bear and really scale it out. And that's obviously hugely important if you're a brand and particularly, a CPG who's not necessarily in the retailer and getting all that retail data. It allows you to then combine that with other data sets and make it really, really effective. So that's kind of the first thing. And then, kind of to touch on the point I made earlier, custom bidding strategies, they typically use signals that come from, the supply side. So it could be anything that's in the bid stream, it could be any available IDs, and then they combine those signals together to get, very smart about how to drive outcomes. Now, all of those models are completely compliant because they don't use any third-party data. They can use a first-party signal, but certainly from an index perspective, we want the cookie dead. We don't, there's an enormous wave of innovation that is kind of right behind that, and I think the issue is that it sort of works-ish, and that's preventing people from taking that leap of faith that I think they need to, and that in fact I think isn't so much of a leap of faith really, because these solutions exist, and not least within Meta, but also on the open web.
Yep.
And so to me that's really exciting.
Yeah. So we've shared thoughts on some AI motions, some privacy regulation. Let's move into a little bit around integration and sort of end-to-end funnel. At StackAdapt, we have a unique ability to see campaigns and programs run on our platform across many different channels: connected TV, digital out-of-home, display, native, audio, etc. And what's interesting, we see also this natural balance of performance marketing is obviously what many of us in the room are performance marketers, and we got to drive the ROI of those campaigns. A lot of us maybe are brand marketers, and we're trying to, maybe come from a PR background or other areas. We're trying to build a story, and I see that sort of as the heart and the mind, the art and the science of marketing, and kind of connecting that full funnel in integration. And so I want to dive in a little bit more around what we're seeing in terms of integrating different strategies, and specifically how you're sort of integrating campaigns and programs across platforms. So Kai, maybe if I could go over to you on, so how is Meta helping brands engage audiences maybe across multiple mediums and platforms?
So there's a couple of ways. So John, thanks for putting kind of clean rooms out. So clean rooms is definitely kind of one that we also focus upon, and advertisers are able to use the data that we are putting in there also for the other platforms. The other one, if I'm thinking about kind of my more traditional background in the years before I joined Meta, is the intersection of 1P data into media mix models. Allowing that one. And I think that's fundamental because at the end you're talking to the same customer, no matter if it's on Google, if it's on Meta, if it's on print, if it's on TV, if it's on out of home.
Yep.
So I think there is now a concept of putting customer centricity back into the game, which was a bit out, in particular when digital was in the rise and is still on the rise. The other thing, just on the Meta platforms, and we heard that in the panel before, is simplification.
Yep.
So when you think about you're creating one ad, and that ad needs to display literally across all of the platforms, no matter what the format is. So you don't create like 5 formats. You're literally kind of creating one format, and then the beauty of technology is then cropping, enlarging it, and so on. So that's one. The second piece, I think, which is an important one, is creative, rethinking creative strategies. Because we are all, and in particular the advertisers, are sitting on so many creatives. In particular, when I'm now thinking about Alvaro, you're working for Nestlé. You've literally built the traditional way, you've built for the digital way. So the question is now kind of on all the assets that you have, can you create something more faster and more reliable, right? So, and that's where
don't forget,
could help.
Several times we get the creatives from global, and they need to be adapted and also cut to the right format, and also just be done for each platform, for each channel.
Yep.
And it costs time, resources, and everything. So,
and I think that's where creative AI needs to come in play, right? So where we need to think about kind of that way. And funnily, we were talking when we met for the first time is think about like a company is going geo expansion, so going to another country. So then you have directly translation problems. Now hiring a translation agency, and I know that back from my software development days, it's like a huge cost. With technology now, you're literally being able to at least get to an 80, 90% accuracy when you do the translation. The one thing you should not forget is the human factor. There will always be a human factor also in AI. So I wouldn't say never trust the AI. The AI is definitely sometimes better than we as humankind, but there's definitely a human factor when you think about color codes, right? In China, red has a different naming than in Germany. So thinking about that, using that in creative and so on, and that's one of the things where we have to train the systems even better, which requires, again, that we are not talking in a one-on-one perspective, that we are talking literally kind of in an industry perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, good points on that. John, maybe let's jump to supply path optimization and how that, what role that plays within inventory creation. I guess specifically, how does it impact transparency and cost efficiency across different buying paths?
Yeah, so look, again, SPO is a process that's probably really started 5 or 6 years ago. And I guess I see curation as kind of the sequel. You know, obviously we're sitting here in a cinema, so it feels like, you know, a good opportunity to try and make an analogy about the movies. But I mean, so if SPO was kind of the original, I think about that as kind of like the Terminator. So it was like terminating exchanges, terminating fees, terminating bad actors in the supply chain. And then obviously you get curation, which is this next phase, right? So it's like, okay, how can we bring extra value? And that's kind of that's the sequel, right? It's one of those movies where the sequel's better than the original. And with curation brings optionality. So I think it's kind of, you know, it probably makes sense as a logic to think, you know, all of the value, I guess, in the first decade of programmatic advertising pretty much has existed in the DSP. Brand safety, brand suitability, targeting, measurement, you know, all of these solutions. And I think it, you know, in your mind, it probably makes sense because that's what comes first, right? But in reality, that's not the case. The first thing that happens is a bid request. And the magic happens before the bid is made. And that's where curation comes in. And so what we're seeing now is a shift of the value, you know, not just to exist alone in the DSP, but also to provide the option to drop some of those solutions onto the supply side and experiment with whether or not those things can provide more value to you as an advertiser. And I think, you know, that's going to be different depending on who you are. There is no sort of one-size-fits-all solution, but I think it has to be a good thing that there are options. And I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of scale and there are a lot of audiences that can be found when you see all of the impressions on the open internet at any given moment. So yeah, you know, I think the future looks bright from that perspective.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you and appreciate the question coming in as well. Very, very helpful. I think as we shift now, maybe let's talk a little bit more about how we can then apply a lot of these ideas and insights to local markets and take learnings from other regions, bring those here to Germany as well. And so, Alvaro, let's maybe go over to you and what's been your experience adapting programmatic strategy across different regions, and maybe just to dive in there, what local market insights are crucial for a successful programmatic campaign?
We work worldwide with golden rules and best practices. That means we have our learnings from the whole world and try to apply it to a local market. It's not always possible. That's why it's really important also to produce our local learnings and to apply the rule local over global, above global.
Yep, absolutely. And there was a question that came in to elaborate more on how you're using contextual targeting for Nestlé brands. If you want to think about that, or else I can go to you here in a second on that. As it relates to, they'd love to hear how you are using contextual targeting within your company. So I'll give you.
I mean, we always use it, or mostly always use it, part of the strategy.
Yep.
I think it's always more accurate, this contextual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting better, but we have several restrictions also. As mentioned before, we need to be responsible and transparent.
Absolutely. And if you ask that question, catch Alvaro afterwards and can dive in a little bit deeper as well. And our team could happily help as well. Kai, let's go over to you. What common mistakes do you see advertisers make when expanding into new markets?
Not understanding the market. That's the first mistake. Well, going into a market without being there. So when I'm thinking about the advertisers that we have, and I'm responsible for all of like commerce, which is e-com and retail. Sometimes they want to go abroad, but they have never spent a second in the market. And I think you need to have that local flavor because it's coming back to the human people. Right, so when you think about, and I'm sorry for making the comparison, John, but if you think about Great Britain, right, so everything is centralized literally on London predominantly in digital. When you go to Germany, right, so you have literally hubs, which is the publishing houses coming out of Hamburg. You have then the more automotive sector, which is a bit south, right, also with Munich, also publishing house. Then some publishing houses moved to Berlin after the wall came down and so on. So understanding those nuances is important. The second one, which companies sometimes forget, is let's use insights before I'm going to enter a market. Let's really think about what is the audience. Is there enough space of an audience? And you can get those insights either from the DSPs or on the supply side as well by leveraging that network. And then the third one is more from that creative perspective, is understanding the nuances from on how consumers are behaving. So if you're going to be really loud, that might not resonate in Germany, right? So there might be the resonation then with minus 70%, which is loud on your ad, but really going loud into a TV ad or any short form video and so on might not resonate. The second one, I think, in particular when you're shipping products, it's important having offices. Yes, we have been consulting a lot of advertisers saying, okay, you can go to that market without having an office in the market. I need to now change my mindset on that one. I think you need to have at least an office there. When I'm now seeing like advertisers thinking going into the US, well, the US is a totally different game, right? So you can't go there if not having any location there, because you need to have someone there because the people will call you, or kind of want to have like a live chat there, and they want to have it 24/7, and you can't come with your more kind of potentially like European way. It's a 9 to 5 hour kind of work day, right? So it's those nuances which really matter at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a big temptation to take as global a view as you possibly can. And, you read the trade press and it feels like, an article is talking to you where you are, but in fact, that's just not the case. And, if you just take a single channel like CTV, for example, I mean, the difference between CTV in the US and every other market in the world is tremendous. And that's before you even get into privacy legislation or the different nuances around domestic broadcasters and their control over content. And then, obviously the history of how television has been sold within each of those markets. And so, I quite agree. You cannot succeed without taking an approach that takes all of those things into account, and that you build a business that's going to be appropriate to those, and that your expectations are set accordingly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Feel free to submit questions if you'd like to. We're going to shift into a little bit of some trends and insights of what we predictions of what we think will happen. So I'm going to open up to the group a little bit and just talk a little bit about what emerging trends in ad tech and martech that you believe will have the biggest impact in programmatic advertising. Maybe go over to you first, Alvaro.
I totally still thinking that the DCO is getting better and better, and also to be optimized for each channel, but also for each user. I think that's a big one. Also, the targetings are going to be more precise because of all these signals we're reading now, or we're getting now.
Yep, absolutely. John, thoughts? Maybe curation or other thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
It feels like, I should say something about AI, but I mean, I feel like that's we've kind of said enough about that. But look, certainly from our point of view, despite the amount that you read in the press and you hear about it, curation is only just starting. I think that we're only just starting to understand some of the use cases that can be supported by curation, and really kind of what it's being driven by is a few things, right? So number one, control. Buyers want to control much more closely where their ads are being shown, and I think we've all seen in recent weeks the unfortunate reports about ads appearing against content that they should never appear against, and in some cases it's highly disturbing. And if you're a major brand, if you're a major advertiser, if you're a major agency, you just cannot allow that to happen. And so it's really driving home the necessity of getting control over where your ads are being shown. And it's all those things that I sort of mentioned earlier. But that's what's really behind all of this from a buyer's perspective. And then it's like, well, okay, what are the solutions that I can build on top of that give me unique value? And so you're seeing a lot of the major agencies develop their own, solutions with data science. Mm-hmm. So custom bidding is one of those. There are several others, and they're able to then put that on top of their curated supply and create something that gives them some real IP.
Yep.
Something that they can really bring to their advertiser that might drive a better outcome than they've seen in the past, and that allows them to trade in a different way. And so I think, we're really only just learning about some of these use cases now. But from our point of view, hugely exciting. Maybe the biggest change to programmatic advertising since header bidding, maybe even since RTB. We think that this is really going to be transformative in the next 3 or 4 years. But yeah, sorry guys, you're going to have to hear more about curation in the years to come because we're only just getting started.
Yeah, so Kai, what are your thoughts?
I would add to John, because I think over the last 5 to 10 years, we have been always thinking about paid. And one of the things which is coming back, it's organic. And let me take the example of affiliates are now creators or influencers. Mm-hmm. So the way of curation has always been there, but we have a bit neglected that as marketeers. Mm-hmm. On the advertiser side, on the DSP side, on the kind of also the publisher side of well. I think that's a trend which we shouldn't forget, which is really close to us, right? So what is the impact of organic to paid and vice versa? The second one, I think, moving a bit away from curation is think about voice. We are all talking to Alexa or to any other thing. We're all talking into our phones. So what is the impact of voice going forward to the way we work as advertising partners together? Because that will even speed up the process of AI technology being used. Because you don't need to think about creative. You need to think about curation creative, where I definitely fully agree with John, but you need to be predictive. Yep. Because, Ryan, you have a different picture in your head when I'm talking about something than Alvaro, than John, than myself. Yep. So at the end, we need to kind of, in the intersection of understanding really how we as humans think, not only from a paid advertising, but also from an organic perspective. And I think the third one is coming back, and John, you mentioned that with clean rooms, is understanding our 1P data. So I'm responsible for my data and not where I'm kind of doing the advertising or the organic thing. So really understanding what is the data that I want to capture and how do I measure the KPIs and what is that top line goal that I'm going to go. Because at the moment, if I would ask here the room is, what is your top line goal? I would get 20 different answers. Mm-hmm. And I would bridge it back down to, but there's only one. Yep. Which is, I think, where AI needs to definitely evolve is profit. Because there's no investor relation report which talks about lovely, shiny curation things and creatives. At the end, every company is literally being measured based on one KPI, which is profit, which is EBIT or EBITDA. And that's the intersection where AI also needs to kind of go a long mile, if you ask me, on the development side of things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I was just going to add that, absolutely right. I think that we all kind of want the sort of flashy generative AI kind of creative aspect of everything that's going on in that space. But the reality is it's kind of the operational, slightly more boring stuff that you need to deal with first. And we've obviously made a huge investment, like most ad tech companies have, in AI over a number of years. And what that's kind of culminated into is a neural network that helps us predict better which impressions are going to be appropriate for which advertisers in real time. And so I think that aspect of obviously being predictive and also responsive is incredibly important. And so what the AI part of that does is just speeds up that whole thing and makes it much faster, much more responsive, and therefore much more effective.
Absolutely.
I think that's a key word, predictable. It's not only about optimizing, but go before that happens. And I think that's a big trend.
Yeah.
And it's in the direction we're going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would add that there's one thing which always sticks with me, which a professor told me. It's from control to release. Mm-hmm. And if you just let it sink, there's so much meaning in that one thing in there, because we are always trying to control.
Yep.
But you need to let it flow because it's in release. And you can't, and prediction is always great, but at the end, prediction always hinders, because at the end, it's that customer which stands in the middle, which sometimes you can't predict, because maybe he is at the sports arena, or he at the conference, or alone at home. So I think that's the way where we need to get, while you said neuroscience, kind of neuroscience is one of the untapped potentials, definitely, from technology.
So maybe a tip out of that. So I was up in Norway this weekend, and Frozen, Disney, so Let It Go, maybe a theme of the day. So that song was way too popular for the last several years. So we've all
started all with the poem you did to your daughters.
So a lot of Disney at my house. We got just maybe a minute or two left. We're going to wrap up here shortly. So maybe just as a final question, what advice or one tip you'd give to the audience here today of what they can do to stay competitive in programmatic strategy and advertising?
Use AI. Use it in a responsible way. We do. Mm-hmm. And just try it, use it. If you're not in, you're out.
Yep. Absolutely. John?
Yeah, I mean, no amazing pearls of wisdom other than to say, to me, this is an unbelievable time. I mentioned earlier that we think that curation is going to completely change how programmatic operates and bring enormous value to the open web, which I think has been sort of lagging over the last 10 years. And so, new use cases are springing up all the time, and it's just a question of making sure that you're open-minded to experimenting with those use cases, and a little bit like what you said, Kai, just you've got to kind of let go a little bit in order to realize the benefit.
Absolutely. Kai?
I have two. One is which Ollie, also it's not working in the system, work on the system. Because you're in the system, you will not get out of it, because you will dig deeper. And the other one I want to leave you is don't think, just thrive.
All right. Thank you very much. I'd say it is a renaissance of AI in the sense right now where there's a huge opportunity to get really good at it's something that I think a lot of people hear and it's talked about, but there's an opportunity for us to become experts in this. So one of the things I'm doing with our team is we're doing a quick 20-minute AI coach session every Friday afternoon. And we're user-led, we're bringing in external speakers, other things, and we're just trying to sharpen the saw, get better at what we use AI for this week that made us better, to help us accomplish our goals and achieve better outcomes. And so I think it puts everybody in an opportunity to continue learning, always evolve, always learning. I think there's so much there to be had. And so we have a unique perspective as a large DSP, I think the fastest growing DSP right now. There's an opportunity for us to see all these different agencies and brands on the platform and do incredible things with AI. So fortunate to chat today, and thank you all for being a part of this and being here today. I really appreciate you. Hope you all have a great day, and schönen Tag noch.
Thank you.